I'm Courtney Williams. I produce the blog Outlander Behind the Scenes, and I love the books. I love the show. I love my discussion group. I love discussing with fans on Twitter. I love Outlander. So, yeah. Today we are here to talk about episode 509, Monsters and Heroes. And I'm drinking water tonight.
Good for you. Well, I'm Carmen, and I write the Outlander Anatomy blog. And I have been a devoted fan of the book since 2014. I came to the party late. I enjoy the show very much, both of them. And I also enjoy the fun activities and exchanges that occur on social media. Most of them are a great joy. There's an occasional one, but most of them are a great joy. And I really like our group. I like our discussions that we have. I like the way that we interact with each other, and I'm grateful to be here.
I'm Catherine. I'm a family physician who really enjoys the books and the show. I write for Blacklanders for some of their episodes. We rotate, so I only do a few each season. This is my absolute first fandom ever being involved in. I didn't even know what a fandom was, other than what I saw from Twilight, which wasn't very favorable. So this has been really fun, just exploring and having discussions and being interested enough in a topic where I could just spend all day talking to anyone and everyone about Outlander.
I'm drinking one of my ciders, a gift from Courtney, and a product of one of her relatives, a cousin. Is that correct? Niece. Lovely. It is the hazy hopped.
Oh, that's my favorite of those.
Good.
I'm having a honey whiskey old fashioned. Anthony made it for me.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I'm bummed Antoinette's not here.
Me too.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to have to step up to the plate and be the sassy one.
Yeah, I know. Especially since Roger's in this one. So.
I know.
I'll do my overall impression and then we'll hop in. I loved this episode. I really loved everything about it. I thought it had everything. It had action. It had relationships, pacing. It was almost straight from the book. I felt like they chose the important scenes. They didn't waste any time. And I just felt it was really well done. And they followed Antoinette's rule of making everything relate back to Jamie and Claire. And I just really enjoyed it.
I thought this was an excellent episode, and I'm having to shuffle a bit, but it's certainly in the top 5 and maybe the top 1. I have to dwell on it a little bit longer in my heart to see whether it will become the top 1 for me, but I just thought it was a splendid episode. It was written by Shana Fewell, and she wrote Blood of My Blood and If Not for Hope. And I liked Blood of My Blood a lot. I thought that was a very good episode. I thought her writing was excellent in this episode, right up there with the top ones. So I was very pleased with it.
I really liked the episode. I liked the pace. I liked the different storylines, with the main theme running through it being about Jamie and Claire. It was one of the few episodes where I watched back to back. I don't do that very often, but I do find that in season 5, it is definitely competing with season 1 as being the best season of Outlander. It was what it was supposed to be. There was, again, I had very little that I didn't like. There's nothing that took me out of the story. I enjoyed it from beginning to end. And in homage to Antoinette, I'd let it get me pregnant.
I'd go on a date with it for sure.
Yeah, no, or was it? I loved this episode.
So much, I would let it get me pregnant.
I'll have its babies.
Well, my favorite scene was the scene of Claire rescuing Jamie from his near death. When he stopped breathing, that whole thing, I've seen it 5 times now, and it never fails to make me grab for tissues. Something that really adds to it is their theme. The bear starts including their theme during it, and it's just so wonderful. It broke my heart. I really liked it. You know, a lot of people made fun of how she brought him back on social media, and I'm sure we're going to get to that, our own opinions about that. But that was my favorite one. I also very much like the scene where Roger blesses Jamie and says it, lays hands on him and gives him a blessing and calls on God's mercy. And I thought that was very touching. I really, really liked that. And then the third one that I liked very much was I liked the bison scene and what happened with Bree and Jimmy. And Lizzie's not much help. But I thought that was very well done. And it was difficult. It did stray from what happened in the book, but it kept true to the general threat and the way that it was resolved. Even Jamie coming out on the porch was in the book. So those are my 3 favorite scenes.
My favorite is also the Jamie and Claire, and I'm not even going to say the resuscitation, just that whole, when she says, "How are you feeling?" And it's the move from Claire the doctor to Claire the wife, and you really feel that. And when she says, "How are you doing?" and he says, "I feel like a pile of moldy tripe."
Yeah.
And she just gets such a tender look on her face. It's like, oh, and she snuggles into him, and just the whole exchange there. And then she says, "You would joke on your deathbed," and then realizes what she says. Just the whole scene is just so beautifully done by them. This is my favorite kind of episode where I can't pick a favorite scene because I'm like, oh, this one. Oh, no, this one. And then, that one's toward the end. And when I got to that one, I was like, oh, no, this is definitely my favorite scene. My second one, I have a lot, but I think it would be the opening scene with Marcelly and Claire when, Marcelly tells her, "I'm glad you're going to be there as my mom," That was really touching. And Lauren is she just kills every scene she's in. And the two of them, I feel like, have great chemistry. Katrina and Lauren. They do great scenes together. And then I loved also the Marcelly and Fergus and the kids' birth scene. I loved that so much. I loved hearing Fergus speak French to his little kids. That little blonde, cheeky baby, while she's like she's going into labor, and the baby's like, "What's with her?" And Fergus is looking like, "How do I escape?" And she's like, "Fergus," and he's like, "I'm here," And then I loved that scene.
The first one I liked the best was between Ian and Fergus. I felt like it was a real conversation that could be had between 2 adopted sons of Jamie. It wasn't overly dramatic. It wasn't overly wrought. It was just simply an exchange. I was like, "I'm looking out for you as my brother," and his brother responding, "It's okay, I get it. It's not necessary." But And partly because I've been waiting for so long for Fergus to have some lines, that it was like, finally, he speaks. I mean, it was wonderfully done. I mean, like he said, it was so natural that it was almost like you forget that he was a character, because like it was so natural. I enjoyed the scene where actually at the beginning I thought it was kind of funny when Jamie came to the cabin and and Bree's like wrapped in a blanket, and Roger's, and he goes, I need, an able-bodied a man. He goes, and you're able-bodied. Obviously, I was like, how embarrassing. And my third favorite was when Roger was bringing Jamie back to the ridge, and just the way he, from the beginning when he was just like, please don't die on me. And then, just his prayer, his concern, his stepping up to the plate, finally seeing the Roger that isn't just a bumbling idiot.
I'm sad Antoinette's not here to heap some praise onto Roger. I think she would.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that, but I think she would. There's one scene where, they're looking for the maggots and he throws something down and she's like, what is it? I thought, ooh, Antoinette's not going to like that. But I love that. I love so many of those scenes. The Ian and Fergus is on my list too. I was so excited. And I looked for any weakness in Cesar's performance or anything. It's just not there. I don't understand why we don't.
It was so smooth and natural that it was like he was having a conversation. He was not acting.
Yeah, and it's the Fergus from the book. He's so much the Fergus from the books that I don't know. Maybe he had his tonsils out in the first part of the season, or I don't know, something. And he couldn't talk or Larry.
He didn't talk much last season either.
No.
Yeah, that's true. The Bree and Roger, when Jamie comes in, I particularly liked the blanket struggle. I've done that myself before.
She wasn't about to let him have it.
No.
And then talk about Roger Mack being furry as a bear. I was like,
oh my
God.
I had to pause that one. I was like,
Yeah. Those follicles are thick and healthy.
Oh yeah.
That way.
And plentiful.
Yes.
Yes. No manscaping there.
No.
Exactly. That's not a metrosexual. All right. So then what worked for you, Carmen?
A lot worked for me. But I actually really enjoyed the prolonged interaction between Roger and Jamie, not only as they are looking for the bison and they approach them and see what was actually stumbling around in the woods, but following the snake bite and what Roger did and stayed with him and did the best that he could, given that he knew he wasn't prepared for that sort of thing, but he really did the best that he could with the knowledge that he had. And I just thought it was really interesting to watch Roger being the provider for Jamie. And always it's been the other way around. So the coin was flipped. He was put in the position where he had to be the leader and trying to save this man's life, and his earnestness in trying to do that. And he marshaled everything that he had available, to him, which coming from, being a professor at Oxford, and living a 1960s life, he probably wasn't even a Boy Scout. I just loved when he tried to shout and he couldn't get his voice out. And then he brilliantly picks up a stick and starts pounding on a tree to try to make a noise that would echo and that might be heard. And I was really thrilled with that he was able to do that whole thing. And then once they got back to Claire's surgery, he was with Jamie almost constantly. And it's lovely to see that bond. I've been waiting for that to develop this entire season, because I really think that they're going to end up seeing the wonderful features that each character has to offer the other one. And, you know, I think Jamie's been pretty skeptical, but I don't think he's going to be skeptical from here on out.
I wrote down the writing, Shayna Fuel. I don't know how you say her last name, but yeah, 406, Blood of My Blood, was my absolute favorite episode from season 4. I mean, I think for me, it stands out like something very different from the rest of the episodes in that season. It's amazing. You know, she was a new writer last season, and she did 411, which, if not for Hope, which we liked. She did it with Bronwyn Garrity, I think is her name. It was well written too, but yeah. And then the director, Annie Griffin, I also thought did a really great job. I think something that was really impressive and that worked was the fact that they got in babies, Buffalo, all these characters. I mean, like, everyone was in this one, including people from the Ridge that I don't remember who they are. You know, like in the hunting scenes and the going to rescue them. So many people, but it still managed to have that intimate feeling that 406 had, that was just like 5 characters last season, with Claire and Jamie and Lord John, Willie and Myrtle were the only ones in that. And I felt like, amazingly, she was able to give that same intimate feeling of just between so many different characters, even though there were so many more people, it still had that. And there was action, and I just was really impressed. I mean, really everything worked for me, and the fact that there was so much pulled from the book. You know, there were creative ways to transition from scene to scene and things like that, but the spirit of this whole part of the book to me came across. So that really worked for me.
What worked for me was the character development of the women. I felt that they have gotten away from that in your face, I am woman, hear me roar feminism, which, I have nothing against, but it just didn't fit with with Outlander. And now what we're seeing is Bree coming into her own as an engineer, Claire as a physician, Marsley as her assistant and as a mother, Lizzie, she's about the same. But
she hasn't figured it out yet.
I know, but it's just they're showing them with the strength. And what worked for me in that is the way that Claire was walking that tightrope between being a wife and being a doctor, and just not knowing which side of the line to fall on. And you could see it with the whole scene about the amputation, the first scene. And she's just like incredulous, like, how you'll die without it. But at the same time, then she turns into wife mode. So it's just very interesting. I thought that was done very, very well. The other thing that worked for me, again, was the development of Roger and Jamie's relationship. I thought that it was very clear. Again, Sam with his nonverbal acting was clear, that the sense of pride and appreciation. And when you could see it in his face when he finally just said, you know what, he's of value. What's interesting and what really works for me is the fact that you can't really separate the different parts of the story because they all just flowed. It was like a river, and it just kept flowing, and just like it was just so, there was no choppiness there. Everything fit into a place, and it was like a day in the life of, as opposed to, you know, this happened, then this happened, then that happened, and that happened, then this it was all just, you know, it was just well edited, well written, well acted. So all of it worked for me.
Yeah. Have you ever found yourself in that position that Claire was in? I mean, not
All the
cutting
time.
off your husband's leg, but
No. Every time my children got sick.
Yeah.
In fact, funny story. When I first had my first daughter with Ava, and it was my first month home. I had a month of maternity leave. Actually, I had 8 weeks, but it was in the first one. And she had colic. And I called up her pediatrician, and I was like, she won't stop crying. And then she goes, do you think it's colic, Catherine? I don't know. She's like, Catherine, turn on your medical brain. Do you think it's colic? And I said, yeah. And she said, well, have you given her some simethicone? I'm like, no, is that a prescription? She was like, Catherine, turn back on your medical brain. I was like, it's you know, every stomach ache, you're like, okay, is this appendicitis? No, maybe not. You know, it is difficult. There are certain things I will not do. I do not have an otoscope in my house. I don't look in their ears if I think they have an ear infection. I make sure I take them somewhere, because I just feel like there's a slippery slope when you start doing physical exams to determine what's going on. But
did they ever complain? Like, I want
they
you
complain all the time.
Mommy, not my doctor, something like that.
They always complain that I'm too clinical, but usually it's with emotional stuff, because I also do a lot of counseling. So they're always like, you know, you're so clinical. I don't want the doctor, Mom. I want my mom. I was like, sorry.
Well,
sometimes
can you switch back and forth?
Depends on the situation. I can when I'm advocating for them. If I'm with another physician and I feel like something's not being done correctly, or they're not taking something as seriously as they should, then I go into doctor mode. And it's not just, I'm not, you know, overbearing mom. I'm Dr. Toomer.
Overbearing doctor.
Yeah. Then I become arrogant doctor. Again, it's just every single situation is different. It just depends how severe they are. You know, I don't care who you are. I don't care how much medical training you have. Actually, sometimes medical training is dangerous because it makes you start thinking of all sorts of things. But when your child has a high temp, it's, you know, I don't know a parent alive who doesn't freak out.
Yeah.
Even if you know what to do.
With your first baby, that's a pretty tall ask.
Yeah.
First babies are freaky.
You know. Well, yeah. Well, even like now with all this COVID, I mean, every time one of them sneezes or coughs, I'm just like, you know.
Did anyone have a least favorite scene?
One of the things that I thought was a little strange is how that snake got to the inside of his right thigh to bite it, because it was on the right of him, but somehow it got around his leg and bit him on the inside of the thigh. And I don't know.
On the inside of the right thigh.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was because he was down on one knee. He had his leg out, I thought. And it jumped up, bit him, and then went back down.
Oh, shooting maybe.
Yeah, that's what I
or
thought.
loading.
But I was like, yeah.
Yeah, I just don't.
I
It still
all.
puts the snake on the far side of the inside of his leg, though. And I was just wondering why they decided to do that. That was something that it's not a big deal. I just am curious about, you know, what their thinking was in that. Did you all see Sam's black underwear?
What?
Yeah. Yeah, they missed it in the editing. You can see that's his leg and part of his thigh, his black undershorts. in the scene,
which scene is this? Right.
well, when he has been helped by Roger and Ian into his own bed, and he has the blanket wrapped around him, and he starts to lay back down, Ian begins to scold him. There's just this one quick scene, and you watch, it's his right leg that you can see his underpants on. They were tight. They were the knit type.
Yeah.
But they were, I know you've seen them before. They weren't the short-legged ones. They were the longer-legged ones, that.
Like athletic.
I know you're
ones.
good. Yeah, I know you're
Like
going to
biker
look
shorts.
for yourself.
Yeah.
Of course. I
see.
mean, did you see Sam's black underwear? I mean, how could you not go back?
Of course. That's the first thing I'm going to do is go back and look.
And then I thought it was a little funny when Roger says, maybe they will see the smoke of our fire. And he adds 3 little twigs on top of them.
Well, like you said, he wasn't a Boy Scout.
If you wanted to make some smoke, you want to put some leaves on top of that, because that can really do the trick. But he just added he just added like 2 or 3 twigs. I thought that was pretty cute. There were only little tiny things like that. I wondered why on earth they were dyeing so many things, that indigo blue, why the ladies were dyeing all those pieces of fabric. I'm curious about that. Maybe I don't know what they were using them for. They looked like more like what was hanging on the line were just pieces of fabric, straight like sheets or
maybe they're going to make clothes out of them.
That's could be possible, but I just thought it was really interesting.
I would imagine that once they're going to dye something, that's a big
might
deal.
As well do as much as they can.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be true, because it looked like it was a lot of work to prepare the the materials in order to do the dyeing. And I thought that was well done. I've seen those paddles used before. That is what they did. They stood and stirred them like that. But I did think it was an awfully lot of things they were dyeing blue. And I was just interested in, are we going to see those in the future? And see
that will be interesting.
How those are used.
I didn't have a least favorite scene. I really didn't. And I didn't have anything that didn't work for me. And I mean, maybe if I forced myself, there were things I noticed, but there wasn't a least favorite or things that didn't work.
My least favorite scene was everyone else's favorite. Was the scene when Claire was rubbed up against Jamie to kind of bring him back. And I think partly because I was distracted by the thought of, you're a doctor, for God's sake, do CPR. But it just so happened that the time that she came back, CPR wasn't widely done. So she wouldn't have known to do that. But at the first time watching, it was just that was so distracting for me. Yeah. That it's like, if you're a doctor, that's not the first thing you think to do when somebody stops breathing. And even mouth to mouth wasn't widely done. I think it was, see, Carmen, I'm starting to do research. It was 1952 was when it started becoming more common. By the 1960s, it was being taught. You couldn't even get certified till sometime in the mid to late 60s. So she may not have ever encountered it. And I wasn't sure at first. I guess if you in the books, I guess it was known what she was doing. I at first I was like, what is she doing? Because it seemed like she was kind of rubbing in the wrong area. And then I was like, well, maybe that, I don't know. I just didn't.
It's in the book, but it's even more graphic in the book.
Well, yeah. Now in the book, I remember reading and thinking, oh, wow, it was really well written in the book, but I just didn't connect with it.
Yeah. Well, okay. Catherine, you remember how just moments ago you were saying that when your child was ill, that your physician side of you had a hard time coming to the forefront, and that your pediatrician had a couple of times had to tell you, hey, get your clinical mind in gear. That may be what, if she was feeling desperate, which I think she was, that she was not thinking either what she might have done. But
Oh, I
mouth to
agree.
mouth, yeah.
But I was thinking that even if she's desperate, she would have been more. That is at the moment where you become more frantic, not as calm. In that situation, I would have thought, even as a wife and not even as a doctor, the first thing I would do was just shake him. It's like, just, do something. But that just seemed like an odd thing to do. As I was watching, I was like, I know everyone's gonna love this scene. And I just don't get it. The other scene that didn't really work for me was the syringe scene. When they used the syringe, I like the idea that it was made. I like the idea that it was engineered. I couldn't get a really good look at it because it looked like the fangs suddenly grew 4 times from the time it was on the head of the snake to the time that it was used.
Well, actually, it's embedded pretty deeply in their tissues. So if she dissected it out, she would have gotten a substantial,
a little more.
Yeah.
But even the tip of it just seemed much. It was much finer on the snake. It looked like, to me.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And the way it was done, and I was just like, was there a reason she injected it directly into the wound rather than injecting it into a muscle, or why that muscle? If blood flow is compromised, would that have helped? I was just, that whole scene was a little bit off for me.
Before we go on to medical, let's do things I noticed. Okay, so I noticed that Roger has a farmer's tan, which I thought was interesting. Since he's a farmer now, in the lovemaking scene with Bree, I noticed that. Well, what happened to Jemmy when Granda came in?
He sat on the bed, I guess.
Well, I think they shot those scenes separately of them
put them together.
And then they had him on the bed and then put them together. And so he wasn't there, basically, for that scene. Did you guys notice Fergus's coat? I noticed it in the scene where they all say, Jamie says, you guys do this and we're going to go this way. He had this really nice tailored coat that was, he's built like a model. He's tall and thin, and it looked really handsome on him. I just happened to notice that.
But it's just how nice the coat was. There wasn't anything.
No.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood.
Good.
I just was like, Fergus looks good and he has lines. Yeah. The spot where Jamie makes the fire with Roger after the snake bite is almost exactly how I imagined that from the book. That
interesting
location where they were for that. So when that happens, I'm just always like, wow. Did you notice when Jamie's scooting back to the tree, when Roger comes back and says, get some rest, he's holding his right arm up? And he doesn't use his right arm, almost like his arm is injured.
I noticed that because also I noticed a scratch on his face.
Yeah.
And when I saw the scratch on his face, I thought it was part of the scene. And then I realized it was healed in the next scene. So it was actually something that must have happened during filming.
That you think he hurt his arm? That had to do
it
with
maybe
that?
Well, on his right, so whatever he did, he could have hurt his arm and scratched his face in the same, whatever it was that.
Yeah, because I was like, okay, so is this like a traumatic response that he's remembering the injured arm? I don't know. It was just interesting. He was holding his arm up like it was injured when he was scooting back, and I just noticed.
Well, he said to Roger that he had pins and needles in his hands and feet.
Yeah,
and his lips were numb, so he may have had. It may have been part of the sequelae from the bite that that he was experiencing, but it could have been something. I didn't think about the fact that it could have been something that actually happened during the filming, that he was hurt.
Yeah.
But I did notice that too, that he favored that arm.
I noticed that Fergus got the Beardsley's horse to ride in this episode.
That horse gets around.
Ian was sitting his horse nicely, and I'll just give anybody in the production who happens to watch this a tip. If you want to make people look good on horseback, have them ride uphill, like you saw them do in this scene where Ian's actually sitting his horse like maybe a brave would. Riding downhill at a trot or a canter is one of the hardest things to do, even if you're a good rider. And they have these people do that all the time. So I was like, yay, they're riding uphill, because I get distracted by the guy who's supposed to be a First Nation guy or an Indian or Native American who can't ride a horse, so the third guy was on a really frisky horse. Who was that third guy?
I was going to ask the same thing. I don't know who he was. They never said.
I think he was some guy who can ride a horse. So they stuck him on there because, his stirrups really long, which is usually the signal of a better rider. And his horse was hopping all over the place, and he was just like,
no big deal, no biggie.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I noticed that the blood skid mark of the buffalo seemed awfully long and heavy for having just been shot and on the other side of the body. But that's okay.
I did not know.
I was like, he was shot and then he shot and fell. And it's like, okay, the skid mark was kind of in the wrong direction, but that's okay. But it was so heavy, and it was like, okay, maybe the bullet went all the way through. No. Anyway, I did notice that. The other thing I noticed, like, for someone who just got gored by a buffalo, she sure did jump right up and I guess it's that mother adrenaline, that superhuman adrenaline.
You don't think she got gored, do you?
Well, not gored, but she was just knocked
tossed.
But that should have, the way she was tossed should have at least knocked the wind out of her.
Oh, yeah.
And she just went down, jumped up, and ran for her child. And I was like, okay.
Well, since Lizzie didn't even bother to pick him up while there's a giant buffalo.
Well, can you imagine having never seen an animal that large before?
Yeah.
I mean, it must have looked like a monster. I mean, she probably had no idea what it was. So.
Oh, and those are huge.
Yeah, they're 9.5 feet long. Male buffaloes or bison.
Yeah. They're huge.
Wasn't that scene done with completely CGI though, or was it?
They had a thing on wheels. Yeah. That they did part of it, a model that they used, and then they added. I mean, I think it was a combination.
Yeah.
But I saw some footage of it, and she was laughing. She said she'd had such a hard time not laughing during it because they're wheeling this thing after her.
Well, and there was a guy who played the buffalo, and he's like,
he would have his hands up.
Yeah.
I do want to say something about the buffalo, and that is that that's what we always call them, but they're not. They're bison.
They're bison.
Buffaloes don't have the beard like the Cape buffalo, in Africa, and the Asian buffalo. They don't have a beard. A bison has a beard, and they have a huge mane of hair all the way around their heads. And I know we do it all the time, but I was kind of surprised that they used the term buffalo, but maybe nobody would have known what they were talking about if they had said bison either. So
most people probably wouldn't. I mean, I would, because I live in Colorado and people raise them here. There are herds of them.
But then also, now, is it that there was another animal that was a buffalo? Or was it just that they called bison buffalo? Because I know buffalo soldiers were called buffalo soldiers because they were black soldiers. They had curly hair like the buffalo, which is what they were referred to as buffalo. So I don't know if it's the same. It's the same animal. Yeah. So if it's the same animal, they use the term buffalo when referring to bison.
I know. I'm just saying that
Oh yeah.
For
No, but I'm saying at that
biologists,
time.
it's not.
No, I'm saying, but at that time,
Oh, I don't
they
know.
called them.
I actually don't know. I know that
Well,
I
do
know about the buffalo riders that you're talking
Yeah.
about because I've seen a movie
Yeah.
about them actually, but I don't know. I think that's done a lot in the movies, and I don't know what it was, you know, during the actual time. I've never read any of the actual newsletter reports about the people who used to shoot them and leave them to their bones, you know, dead on the prairies as they would get out of their train. They'd just stop and shoot them for no purpose and no use.
Really?
No, but what I mean is that
yeah.
the Buffalo Soldiers, that name was coined during that time based on the fact that people said their hair looked like buffalo. So clearly someone was calling them buffalo even then.
Are there two different animals, a buffalo and a bison, or is it just all bison?
I think they're
In America or
anywhere
in the world. Yes, they're two different animals.
Okay. Where do buffalo,
Asia and Africa are the buffalo, and the bison are the American bison. But it's so commonly done. I see it as a teaching opportunity.
Yeah,
okay?
no,
so that's all.
You know what? I've been corrected in Colorado, and I know that we have bison and they're not buffalo, but when you guys were just talking, I started thinking, wait a second, are there two animals? Because maybe you're saying that all buffalo are bison.
Well, they're not
all American.
No, I think the ones that were native to Canada and the United States were all biologically bison. And they all have this mane of hair that comes all the way around, and what they call a beard. But if you look at the Cape buffalo and the Asian buffalo, they do not have a beard here. If you think back to Apocalypse Now, do you remember that scene? Never mind.
Yeah. Well, they also have like their horns are a little different. They have like
they're
like a horn that comes from the sink and they come around.
They're bigger instead of, you know, kind of being these shorter things that curve up.
They look more like larger rams.
Are you talking about a water buffalo? Like those?
Like water buffalo? And,
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They don't look anything like bison, I guess.
No. Yeah. But
they're
people do use the name
buffaloes.
interchangeably.
I just
I'm curious why they started being called buffalo.
I don't know. Because I think people probably didn't know.
That's weird.
But did you hear Matt say after the episode was over that they thought, how are they going to find any? He used the term buffalo, and then they found out they had a herd there in Scotland.
Yeah.
Well, I thought that was pretty cool. They didn't have to, you know, come over or get some public footage or come over and film in the United States or anything. They actually had a herd there.
I have a question. What happened to the bison that Jamie shot?
I don't think they ever shot it, did they?
He said
shot,
he
but it
did.
didn't
He said he
was
did.
injured. It was injured, but it wasn't killed. I guess it ran off.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't know if that's the one that came into their yard because it was separated.
Ooh, where's the asshole who shot me?
Well, see, then that could explain the blood. If he was the one that was shot, then that would explain the blood. Because he was shot
wounded
on the right side,
skid.
and then Claire shot him on the left side.
Yeah.
So that would explain
he would have shot him on the right side.
The right side.
He said he got him.
Yeah.
I don't remember his exact words, but he said he shot him.
Yeah.
So who knows?
Okay, medical, anatomical. I'm going to close my window.
There's a lot.
Oh gosh.
This is, I thought the snake bite itself was pretty good. I'm sure it was CGI, but I don't know that for sure. I thought it was a pretty good representation. I'm not so sure that the skin quite forms that little crater on the edge of it like that, but I didn't have time to really research that, so I could be wrong about that. But I did think that the gradual inflammation, infection, and necrosis that they demonstrated were well done. I thought that the wound looked pretty awful about the time that she started injecting it, though I'm thinking he needs a skin graft. it was really pretty macerated, but I couldn't get a good look at it, just how extensive that was. One of the things, though, that I think is really important about now is that you do not cut and you do not suck venom anymore. No. That's not done anymore. You do not give alcohol to them. And he should have taken off the boot and the sock off of his leg in case they were somewhat constricting. Now you're told to wrap it lightly and get help as soon as you possibly can. You're not supposed to use a tourniquet. In Roger's defense, into the 80s, that was still in the Boy Scout manual, that you were supposed to cut and suck. That's what you're supposed to do, and it actually makes it worse.
Well, and he was said, can you walk? You're not supposed to move around, are you? Because
you're actually
speed up the blood.
That's the spread.
Yeah.
Yes, but he's not exactly in it. I've thought about that, and if you think about it, if it was now and a car wasn't very far away, then you might have the person lean on you and help them over to a car so you could get them help, or if your cell phone works, you could call for help. I mean, there are other options now, but he was pretty much alone, and how's he going to get the guy out of there? And I think that I think he probably didn't realize how desperate the situation was going to become when he said, can you walk? Because no, you don't, you keep the person as still as you can. I think it's really very interesting. There was a huge discussion on it in a Facebook group last night that I'm a member of, and people from Australia were adamant about how it should be treated, and I just thought it was a very interesting thing. But given his time, he did what was generally accepted, and it's even in camp. Camp counselors at different campgrounds and everything had it in their manuals too. My boys were both working on their Eagle Scouts, and I read their manuals. It was in there in the 80s. So, yeah, he was gone a long time before then.
What was your snake chant that you told us one time? Something yellow.
Oh, red and yellow, kill a fellow. Yeah. Red and black, friend of Jack. But that's for a coral.
Yeah.
And I think this was a cottonmouth, given its coloration.
Color.
And Diana, somebody said it was a rattlesnake in the book. No, it wasn't. She never said what kind of snake it was. She just said it had dark gray and brown markings, but it was the Kezi and Josiah that went out and found rattlesnakes and brought them back and killed them. And that's how, or brought some back alive, I guess, because one was wiggling in a sack. And that's what gave Bree the idea that she could use the fangs of that snake. But I think it's markings. I looked up the 6 venomous snakes from North Carolina, and assuming they haven't changed over 200 years, it looks like it's not a coral, and it's not a copperhead.
Like a cottonmouth.
Well, a cottonmouth is the same as a water moccasin, apparently.
Moccasin, yeah. Oh, yeah. I know. We had them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And they have that kind of coloration. It looked to me like I don't know what they used for the snake, but it looked like it had been colored that way. It's not quite black. The same. Yeah.
They're black on top, and they have like a flat white bottom.
Yeah.
When they flip, they look completely white. But when they're on top, and they're nasty, and they're fast.
Yeah, the water.
They're very fast. Yeah. Yes, on land they are fast.
We grew up with those in Texas, and
we had a pond behind
our
house.
They'll come after you in the water.
Well, they come after you on land too. We actually had to stop swimming in our swimming pool because our pool was butted up. Our land butted up to a marsh, and it was just like we were overrun by water moccasins. Yeah, I know.
We just scary.
That's not cool.
No, they're nasty.
When my sons were in scouting, we took our youngest to a scout camp, And when we got there, they had a big plastic encased case, and in it was a cottonmouth. And I just placed my hand on the outside of the plastic. I didn't move or anything. I just placed my hand there, and it struck at me. It could sense the heat, I'm sure. It took a minute, for enough heat to sense, because I wasn't moving. I just stood still, and boy, that is a frightful view when you see that mouth opened up.
Yeah, and coming at you.
The things I noticed also was his breathing was very realistic.
Yes.
It was like this. He was short of breath, and it was harsh. It wasn't just that he was breathing fast, but I don't know how he did that without getting dizzy, because it would have been the same. I would imagine it would have had the same effect of hyperventilating.
Well, he might have been using his UIG breath from yoga. I don't know if he does yoga or not, but that's what you use.
Okay.
Throughout a yoga practice for an hour, you make that sound in the back of your throat. You can do it in the back of your throat, but I thought his breathing was very believable and well done. But we're going to bounce back and forth on this part, I think.
That's
but
fine.
If I were Claire, once I got those maggots out of that wound and they cleaned out the necrotic tissue, I would have put the broth right in it. I would have soaked a cloth and put the soaked cloth right on top of the wound rather than...
I think she does that in the book, right? Or does she?
I don't remember. I haven't read it for a while. It could be. I don't remember her doing that, but I would. That's what crossed my mind is that I would have done that.
Mm-hmm. Roger says, I think it's venomous. How does he know that?
I don't know, but there is a way you can tell based on the shape of the head, but I don't know how he would know, because that's the first. It was funny because I was watching with my daughter and she said, "Do they even have venomous snakes in Scotland?" So I was like, I don't know. Maybe
it wasn't Scotland.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So she was saying maybe his knowledge base is what she was saying. But I think that he'd been there long enough. I mean, he'd been in the Carolinas long enough to just know. I mean, because when you move to a new place, the first thing you think about is what kind of kill me. I need to,
That's true. That's true.
So
Governor
I would
Tryon.
Exactly. So I would imagine that, knowing the different types of snakes, especially since there are a lot of non-venomous snakes as well, like, the rat snakes and the oak snakes and all the rest. So
knowing the difference.
He probably just knew the difference.
Yeah, that was a...
Oh, and remember in the book, they had that book that told them all about North Carolina that John Gray gave them, I think. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so he could know from that.
But the other thing I thought is that that's the way they showed the wound. It would definitely leave a scar the way it was described in the book.
Yeah.
In that
it'd be interesting to see what they end up doing with it. Yeah,
because there's going to be muscle. I mean, the way they described it, their muscle was gone. It's going to be regenerated. So
no.
That leg was nasty.
It was. It was indeed.
So, question: that's a lot of blood that Roger spits out. Like that's a full. It's like a like.
Mm-hmm.
Is that that realistic?
There's probably a little deep. It would have been a little deeper. Carmen, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like that would have been a bit superficial for him to be able to suck that much blood, unless he cut very deeply. But
no,
even
I
then,
think
in that
it
area,
was. I think it was more than what one would expect. But I mean, I think they were trying to match it with Jamie's comment about "Don't suck me dry." You're going to suck me dry, which is from the book. And maybe they were, if they tried less, maybe it wouldn't show very much. But that was a mouthful. I think that was probably a little bit too much for it to be likely.
Did anyone else notice how well the perfectly made cot
travois?
with the I was like, where did all that rope come from? Because it wasn't twine. So I was like, okay,
yeah.
it's like, did you have, it's like if you used vines from a tree, there would have been more, but it was like perfectly
he
done.
had that sack with him. Maybe they have like,
Okay.
that
they
he
might have
gave
had
Jamie for a pillow or backrest or
Mhm.
whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, I just saw. I thought that
It
was
was
very
pretty
well
handy
made.
for Roger.
Yeah.
Something
That was
else
very
I
nice.
noticed is, and I missed it the first couple of times, but when she is preparing to amputate his leg, I thought that was a touching scene when her hand was trembling, and
Mhm.
she was trying to still herself and get ready for what she was gearing herself to do. She's got a belt around his thigh. Did you see it?
Mhm. Yeah, I did
Yeah,
notice that.
in preparation to use as a tourniquet. And I was pleased to see that. That is what they did, and that is what she would do. There's a piece of cloth underneath it. She was prepared, to tighten it before she actually began to cut. When Josiah, I think it was Josiah now, I don't know which one they're
Yeah,
intending,
the
but
one that
found
talks is Josiah.
found the maggoty bunny. That was a snare. Did you see it?
Uh-huh.
There's a stick in the ground and it has a thread, little string attached to it. And so that bunny was in there because somebody had snared it and it couldn't get away. And they had forgotten to check the snare, apparently. And that's how that bunny got there. And I missed the snare the first time, but it's there.
Jamie also throws up. Would that be that?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes.
That would be a venomous poisoning thing.
Yeah. I mean, there's different kinds of venom. Some are neurotoxins, but the kind that he got, if it was one of the 5 vipers, because the coral snake is not a viper, the other 5 are. If it was one of those, they are all hemolytic and vomiting, nausea and vomiting is part of the.
And which is why alcohol would have been the worst thing to do.
Right.
It would have thinned his blood even further.
Well, and I think he just kept giving it to him unless he had a canteen of water.
We know that the first one was alcohol because he pours it on the knife and says, this is what Claire does before she cuts anyone, and then gives it to him. So that one at least had alcohol in it. I don't know about Roger has another one that he gives him later, but it looks like a hip flask to me, not a water bottle. But
and I did notice that that was a different knife than the one he chopped the snake's head off with.
Yeah.
Because I thought, that's a pretty clean knife. The one that
I think
he
that
chopped
was the one from his boot. I think that's the one when he cut his hand.
Yeah.
I think he kept it in his boot, and that was a dirk that he chopped the head off with, I think.
Yeah, and
guy's got weapons.
They show it later. They show it later because he, puts it in the ground. And it's still there when Roger takes the snake head.
Which also was really brilliant of Roger to do that. He said, I don't really know why, but and then I think he said that he thought maybe Claire might know what kind of snake it was.
That might help her treat him. Yeah.
Yeah, but she didn't have a whole lot of options. So,
well, I guess at that time, antivenom was dependent on the type of snake that you were bitten with. So,
and that was Roger's context.
Yeah. Although I would be interesting to understand why he would have known again. What maybe just a reader. I don't know.
That it was antivenom?
Well, that there was antivenom for snake bites. I mean, it just seemed like a bit of a trivia that would be surprising for someone in England and Scotland without venomous snakes would know at that time.
Yeah, that's a good point. He's a university professor.
Exactly. That's what I said. He just read. He's just a reader.
He's just a reader would be my thinking on it.
Did you guys have any comments on that sexual healing?
Oh, in terms of the
medical
the likelihood.
Well,
the likelihood of
some,
that.
Definitely, we would have gotten some parasympathetic reaction. For sure.
Point and shoot.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't think he got to the shoot level,
No, I don't think he
but
got to
I
that
do
point
think
yet.
he may have gotten to the point level. Here's what could have also happened, and this is my professor brain. But when he stopped breathing, it only takes a very short time before carbon dioxide starts building up in the blood, and that is a trigger to start breathing. That in sleep apnea, that's one of the reasons why they think people all of a sudden start breathing again, is because the carbon dioxide is building up in the blood. The blood becomes too acidic, and then that's a signal to the brain from the receptors in the aorta to start the breathing process. So it might have been coupled with not only her stimulation of him, of his genitals, but also of the carbon dioxide. I don't think of it as sexual, though. It's really interesting. A lot of people were saying, I saw a bunch of stuff online, she jerked him off and she, did a boob rub and all this sort of stuff. I thought it was less sexual than that's a part of his body that he's very attuned to and responsive, and that, he's the one that said, touch me, because he thought that would bring him back. He's so responsive to Claire. And so I think it might have well been a combination of the physiological aspect of it, and then also of her. And she's supposed to be a healer. She's supposed to have really some special powers in her healing that we're going to see in the future, I think.
And I think maybe that's why I just, I didn't see it as sexual at all. I saw it more clinically, and so that's probably why it didn't resonate with me as much. I just thought it was interesting how he started breathing, and then he just seemed to stabilize without any other intervention.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. But, it's television.
But here's the thing. It is television, but that's straight from the book.
Yes, it is.
And the description in the book, Carmen, you said earlier that it's more graphic, but I remember being kind of confused. I felt like she was
her hands, trying to figure out how her hands were.
Yeah, in the book, she was doing a rocking motion, and I felt like she was touching him
with both hands.
And the peritoneum.
Yeah, perineum. Is she in the book? She puts a hand between his legs.
Yeah.
Remember, and touches him behind the scrotum. She puts her finger there, and then she reaches over the top and takes a hold of his phallus, and then she rocks with him.
Yeah, so it's like a
simulation of sexual intercourse. To me, that's how I took it, was a simulation.
To me, I felt she was rocking his core. That's what I took it, and it was like almost like a primal rhythmic, like of
I like that,
bringing him, keeping his heart going, keeping his rhythm of his life of breathing.
It's like chest compression, but not on the chest.
In there. But that's their connection point, and that's the core of him as it relates to her.
Yes.
And the reason I'm saying this is Diana doesn't write these whimsical things.
No.
I didn't read the Parade article. I don't know if they talked about that, but now I'm really curious about what
I've read a couple.
State of mind it was.
They made really, I don't know, kind of flippant remarks.
I think I read one, like a hand job that brought
Jim talk.
The hand job that resuscitated Jamie. But
right,
I'm interested in Diana's point of view. Did you see anything? Did she make any statement about that?
No, but she's broken her shoulder, and I don't know that she's feeling very much like doing too much typing.
I know.
That's so painful. Oh, that's painful, and it's hard to heal. That pain doesn't go away.
And for a writer, that's just
I mean, every single is it her right side?
Yeah.
Yes.
Her right shoulder.
Right-handed?
Yes.
Yeah, because that, I mean, for the rest of her life, every time it rains, she's gonna feel it.
Yeah,
That
hopefully
kind of,
she'll have good,
when
you
she
know,
said
like,
broke her shoulder, I'm trying to figure out what she means by that. Like, what actually broke?
She didn't say, because there's a lot that
That could
that's
have
a
break,
complicated
exactly.
joint, and there's a lot that
Exactly.
can be damaged there. And she just said, ow, if you read her
Yeah,
tweet about it.
I
She said
know
it
that
was
hurts.
I think she
two
would have
dogs and
said
a hose.
collarbone if it was collarbone, but that's what
I
I
think
think.
she would
Yeah,
have,
yeah.
but you know, it's part of the shoulder joint, technically,
Mhm.
So then
anatomically
maybe
it
it
is.
is.
Yeah, but there's so much up there that,
Yeah, there is.
and it hurts. Oh,
I would be interested in, you know, obviously not in this moment, but, you know, just how she came, and knowing her, I think that she would just say that that's what happened.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I think that one of the things that she can do, and this is a huge book, you know, the Fiery
Yeah.
Cross is gigantic, but she took the time to explain step by step by step so that we were following her through this event. And
Mhm.
this was done rather swiftly. And I think for people who are not book readers, you know, I can see why they might be frivolous about it or joke about it, you know, or the
right.
locker room type talk.
Yeah.
That it's not that way at all in her
No.
description.
Mhm.
It is
No.
a deep connection between these two people. And it is the one way that, you know, you remember she connects that way too, because she says that that's what kept her with Frank. They always,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
that was one
Yeah.
way they solved their problems was through
Mhm.
sexuality. Now, that's
Mhm.
not the same as the relationship she has with Jamie, but I think Claire is a very sexual woman, and I think that um, erotic is not the right word, but
Mm-mm.
sensual. I think she's a
Yeah.
very sensual person.
Mhm.
And I think this is what, when he said touch me, she knew exactly what he meant by that. It wasn't,
Yeah.
you know,
Mhm.
somebody
But
might have
also,
said, you know, somebody else might have said, hey, where do you want me to touch you?
yeah. One thing I did find that it was it was very intimate. I mean, that's no question. I didn't see it as sexual at all.
Right.
But I think one of the things it shone a light on was that skin to skin contact is healing.
Yes.
This is the reason when you deliver babies, you put them right on the mother's chest. It's the reason like when you hug me, you rock them to your chest. I mean, that's just, and so when she did that, it was almost there was a level of desperation when she pulled off her ship. I think that was more significant than what she was doing with her hands.
He said, I'm cold. I'm
Yes.
cold.
Mhm.
And it was like she was just trying
That
to,
frightened her.
yeah, it
Yeah.
was like she was just trying to cover him and warm him up and bring him back.
But I've read stories about the Arctic peoples, natives that live in the
Mhm.
Arctic. And when someone gets very, very cold, I have read stories where they get undressed with them and put them
Yeah.
against the skin, you know,
Mhm.
in order to warm. That it's a very effective way of creating heat. And he did
Yeah.
say, I'm cold. And that frightened her clearly when he said that.
Would you say that's what people say before they die?
That they're cold.
Okay. So she
Okay.
would know that. And then him saying, touch me before I sleep.
Mhm.
You know, it was her trying to bring him back. It was her trying to give him his last wish. It was, I think, all of it, you know.
Mhm.
Did you guys have any more medical, anatomical?
Oh, one thing anatomical. Sam has the cutest feet. Interestingly, though, for me, that was more intimate. That to me, showing his feet or his foot was far more, I thought, sensual than showing him when he was in the water with his shirt off. I mean, to me, that's more personal, I should
You
say.
mean at the mill?
No,
No.
I know, just not the. Oh no, that one's different.
No, the
Personal, I think.
Greystoke moment. The Greystoke
Yeah.
moment.
No, but personal. I think that feet are like a part of body that you generally don't see a lot, especially in men. I mean, women wear sandals often, men I guess do too, but I just thought that was a part of his body we've never seen before. I just thought it was very personal. It was like, because that's his feet. I mean, that's not something they added. That's just what his feet look like. So it's like, oh, I know what another part of his body looks like.
Did you notice the anatomy of his toes? His second and third toes have a higher web between them than the rest.
Now that I didn't notice. I did notice the lengths though.
It's
I've always
a pretty
noticed
common
his hands.
variation that you see,
Yeah.
but you can. They look like two little toes that are kind of plugged in together.
Yeah,
because
together.
the web is shorter on them than they are in the rest of the toes, and you see that on people fairly often. But I just thought that was cool.
But I've noticed his hands. I mean, he's always had very nice hands.
He's beautiful hands.
Yeah. But I just thought that was very interesting.
And it's Graham's second favorite part of the body, right?
Yeah, that's what he said.
Yeah.
What was this first? I can't remember.
The gut.
Oh.
I have one more thing to add about the leg.
The leg, go ahead.
I thought that the makeup on it was really good.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought the intense redness, the modeled sort of appearance. Did you see how it was modeled, Catherine? And I think that would be consistent with the kind of injury that he suffered. I just thought it was really well done. The only part that I was a little taken aback was that what was left over of the wound when she started injecting was really pretty rough.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looked mangled.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
I thought I saw, and I don't know, I want to see what you guys think, when Roger is sucking out Jamie's blood, I thought he had a little flashback to Blackjack Randall. I saw a moment of like just kind of disgust and like, get off there. And I think that in the book anyway, I don't remember in the show, he cuts him and sucks his blood out.
Yeah,
Blackjack
that's right.
does.
That's right. He does.
And I saw a reaction to that was like disgust.
It seemed harsh. It seemed awfully harsh for the situation.
I think it was a flashback to Blackjack Randall.
Oh, wow. I didn't think I didn't make that link, Courtney.
It's funny because I kind of thought that, because I thought that's a very intimate place to, put your mouth to. Yeah. And I did think about that because that's when he was on the stool and Blackjack was
licking his back.
Him. And yeah. Or you at least, stroking him in some way. But I just thought that he would imagine, I would imagine anyone in that area other than Claire would have caused a reaction.
Yeah. And Roger has dark hair and a ponytail.
Yeah. Oh,
and I just thought it was I thought I saw Jamie have a flashback and just say, that's why he said, get up. Like if you watch his response, he gets like anyway.
That's a really important point, I think, because it does seem a response that was out of proportion with what Roger was doing, but that certainly would explain I tried to see if the script was out. It's not. Sometimes those little kinds of things are said in the script, but it's not out yet, or it wasn't this morning.
I was a little disappointed that they changed the line. And this kind of touches on what we talked about last time, but in the book, when Bree asks, what about Dow? What is he, a laird? And Claire says he's a man, and that's no small thing to be.
Yeah, I wish they had left that in too.
Because personally, Diana's words always make me think, but I can remember the first time I read that and, really thinking about that. And, Jamie is a self-actualized man,
Yeah.
And it is, no small thing to be a self-actualized man or a self-actualized woman. But I was a little disappointed that they changed that line.
I'm not surprised given Star's focus.
Yeah.
That they would remove that as something of value, like a man of worth. I mean, that just being a man is a person of worth. That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they are very female focused.
Yes.
That could explain it, but it's a shame because that's
Yeah.
a really important line, I think.
I think so too.
The Greek mythology. Did you guys were you
look it up,
with that, or did you look it up? I had to look it up.
I
But
did.
I
know what he meant by Sharon, but I didn't know what he meant by Procrustes. That was new to me. But now I do.
Bed, yeah. So Procrustes used to adjust everyone to fit his bed. He would stretch them or amputate parts so that they would all fit in his one
nice
bed
guy.
that he made. Yeah, yeah. So Jamie saying, "What is this Procrustes bed?" Because he's hanging off most of it, you know. And then Roger says, "Well, it's better than Karen's boat." And I had to, because of his accent, I thought it had a whole other syllable in there. When I was looking it up,
Karen's boat?
Well, I thought he said
Karen. Karen. He sounded like he said Karen, but it's Karen.
Well, it may be the way the Scots pronounce it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But then that one transports people between life and death.
Life and the afterworld.
The river Styx, across the river Styx.
That was an example of, them not spoon feeding us. And just, I was happy to have to look it up. I knew, and then it was like a way that a professor and then Jamie, the learned Jamie, would have.
Exactly. And that's what I took it as.
Yeah.
Because he kept commenting on Roger being a professor, so they say. And he just kept and then realizing that they have something in common. I mean, if you're in Oxford, Don, you do know a certain amount of Greek and Latin, and and so I thought that was very interesting. I like that, but it's also part of that progression of their relationship for me.
Yeah, which was woven and seamless. It wasn't like simply done, and then as Roger gains confidence, which is true for anybody. He allows more of himself to be seen by Jamie, including, his sense of humor and his professorly stuff. And
and his concern for him, because at the beginning, when it first happens, he's kind of clinical, Roger's a little crispy about it, but then as time goes by and he really realizes that this is a really significant injury, he starts showing his concern and care for Jamie. One of my favorite things that was said was when Jamie says verse 6.
Yeah. When he corrects him.
That's so Jamie. And then,
you said what?
When he says Matthew,
he says Matthew,
something verse 3, and he says,
and he goes
verse
6. He would know too. And that's so Jamie. And then the other one was when Marsley said that on the way back he was criticizing Roger's sled that he had pulled him on the construction of his sled.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this writer knows Jamie.
Yep.
And Claire. And all the characters. She even knows Fergus.
Yes.
Yep.
Let's do favorite lines if you have any.
I liked "It's a great day for dying."
Yes.
That was interesting foreshadowing, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah.
I thought that was a good line. And then remember when Bree comes in and she hands the syringe to her mother, and her mother looks at it, and then she looks up at Bree and she says, "Beautiful engineering." Well, I don't think she was just talking about the syringe. I think she was talking about the child from her and Jamie. That Bree was also a beautiful piece of engineering, genetic engineering, to put it in scientific terms. Her brilliant, capable, thoughtful daughter. resourceful. Give my sword to the bairn. That's right out of the book. I thought that made me cry. He said, tell Claire I meant it. What do you think he was referring to? Any
I think
ideas?
it's when he says, if I don't tell you, if the last thing I say to you isn't I love you, know that I didn't have time.
But that hasn't happened yet in the series.
Oh, really?
No, what he said to her, there may come a day when you and I shall part, but it shall not be today. That's what we discussed.
Yeah.
You know, remember, I thought it was Doug Watson's line, but you said no, he gave the other one.
Yeah, so, okay, I don't know then. That's what
I don't know.
assumed.
I was curious what you ladies thought. Any ideas?
I have none. I remember making note of it and wondering what it was and, being curious, but.
He hasn't said that in the show yet?
I don't think so. When?
I don't know.
Fearing you about has become an everyday occurrence.
Yeah.
I thought that was good.
Good banter between Roger and Jamie. I had a few nasty sting you got there. Want me to blow on it?
Yeah.
That was good. That made my husband laugh out loud, actually.
I liked, let's see. You should work on your bedside manner, Sassenach.
Yeah, that was my favorite.
How's your bedside manner, Catherine? Is it good?
Pretty good? It's very good, actually.
Yeah, I bet it is.
I
don't doubt it either.
I was told by many doctors that bedside manner is a difference between patients being treated and patients being well.
Oh, nice.
I like that.
In fact, I've had many patients who I've just had absolutely no idea what was going on, and they thought they had the absolute best care, even though I told them I had no idea what was going on. You're the best doctor ever. I've never been treated so well, and I'm just like. But I always touch. I'm a very hands-on. I hug. I'm one of the. I'm not of the school where you don't cry with your patients. If my patients cry, I'll cry with them.
Good for you.
I hug,
because it's so sad when you go to see a physician and they're sitting at their computer typing. They never touch you.
I don't even keep my computer. I don't take my computer in the room. So ever since electronic medical records, I leave it outside. I'll let them know. I'll make notes here and there, writing down just so I don't forget. But I never take a computer in. You have to tell if someone's telling you the truth. You have to look them in their face. If you're typing, you can't do that.
That's true.
I mean, I have notes that back up, but I feel like I get to the bottom of what's going on a lot faster.
Did you have any favorite lines, Catherine?
You know what my favorite line was, and it's going to sound really strange, when Fergus was with his babies, he kept saying, go ahead, touch it, go ahead, touch it. Because the way he was saying it was so real, and it was like he was ad-libbing. There's no way that was scripted.
Yeah.
There was some of it that was scripted, obviously, but it was they were just said, just encourage him to do something.
Yeah.
And the way he did it was so fatherly. And it was like he spoke first, speaking to a freshman. He's like, go ahead, touch it. And he kept saying it, even though Marcy was leaning against a tree, going into labor. He's like, go ahead, touch, like a father showing his child. And I loved that scene. I thought it was such a warm and it was simple, just a simple thing. The line of, today's a good day to die. I thought that was clever. And then the other was when Claire said the scene where she's like, you mean not that you love me?
Uh-huh.
And he said, and basically Jamie was saying, no, I mean, I always love you whether I'm alive or dead, but I can't remember but that was the way she delivered that line was, I thought was brilliant acting. And also I just liked the way that She was sort of incredulous but teasing, but at the same time slightly insulted.
Yeah.
Just like, I just thought it was, you're like, wait a minute,
digging a little for
Yeah.
And I just thought it just encompassed so much in what was said and how it was delivered that was actually my favorite.
The Fergus is clearly more of a baby whisperer than Jamie, than Sam.
Oh, yes.
Cesar. Because he's juggling those babies all the time.
But he has nieces that he plays with.
Yeah. When their new baby comes and he kisses her, I thought that was a really sweet scene too.
She's a pretty good size. She must have been a pretty good sized baby.
Yeah, really.
Poor little Marsali was, when she's moving toward that tree, she kind of tilts. Did you notice her?
Did you notice? Now, did you notice how she was awfully high for someone who's about to deliver?
She was.
I was like, she hasn't dropped at all.
Yeah. Not if it's going to come right then.
I did think that the exam that Claire was doing was very realistic also. She was feeling around and trying to determine the position of the baby.
And that was foreshadowing too. You could probably have this one on your own.
Yes, it was. And she did.
Yeah.
Well, Fergus was there.
I wonder how she got back home.
Yeah, that's a good, I thought the same thing. Did he leave her with the baby and take the two kids back or yell? Or maybe they weren't very far. Maybe he could have called out.
Yeah.
Rolo might have come and found him.
Yeah, I loved it when Rolo came and licked Jamie's face. I hope we get outtakes from that. Yeah. They probably had honey on his face or something.
A little bit of
enticement.
I liked a line that Fergus said when he was having his discussion with Ian. He said, Marsali and I try not to think of what we lack, but what we have. And I thought that was a really great advice for all of us, honestly. Especially now when we're all cloistered, and so much of the things that we enjoy doing are stripped from us. And I just thought that was a very nice line.
Agreed. Carmen, do you have standouts?
Sam, I just thought his facial expressions throughout this were just unbelievable. They reminded me of 301 when he was laying stationary and the only thing he could do was move his nostrils, basically, and breathe. He can put so much into a scene. When he says to Claire, they're alone, and he says, I'm worried about you because when you scold me like a magpie, I know that I'm going to be okay, but when you're as tender as milk, then, I'm worried. And when she starts scolding him, did you notice his facial, how he raises his eyebrows and kind of comes back? And I mean, it was just an array. I was just enthralled.
Yeah.
Just enthralled with him.
I did notice that. He looks like a little boy when she does, like, oh, I'm going to be okay. She's doing it. Yeah.
I just thought that was just remarkable. And then, when he really became ill there at night when he was with Roger, and, that venom no doubt was starting to lyse his red blood cells at that time. I mean, he really looked sick.
Yeah.
He really looked ill. And that's hard to do. People who die on film, a lot of them you can see they're not dead because they have too much animation in their face. They need to go slack and they don't know how to do that. He actually can project into his face whatever situation he finds himself to. It's remarkable. It really is.
Yeah, I thought when they got him back and he was first on the table and he looked so sweaty and so pale, that I had that thought, like, how does he look so sick like that?
I'm sure makeup helps, but it's the way that he controls
The
his
energy.
facial muscles,
Yeah.
his
Mhm.
energy and his control that he has, and I thought he was fabulous when he grabbed that saw,
Yeah.
you know, and he's just like a cornered, wounded animal, you know,
Mhm.
and he's saying, you know, you are not going to do this to me, as he fights her. And I thought that was another impressive. I mean, he was fabulous throughout it, but those were some of the ones that just really caught my eye and my heart. Roger Rick did a great job in his role. Claire, those are standouts to me.
Mhm.
My first one that I wrote was actually Katrina, believe it or not, for this episode. I felt she was, particularly that scene with Bree. If he's dying, I have to cut his leg off, but he's made me give him his word. And how could I? Every time he looks down, he'll think of me and that I didn't keep my word. I just, could feel her torment in that scene, and I just felt she was so strong in every one of her scenes.
Yeah.
And then Sam, Richard, Lauren, Cesar,
Finally.
John Bell is also a little powerhouse. And then the writer and the director, Shayna and Annie. And the music, same thing. When Bear, that Jamie and Claire theme song that he wrote is just, I think any of us could hear just a little tiny bit of that, and immediately, when that starts playing in that scene, that is my favorite scene, it just puts you right in the emotional state of those two. And I agree with you, Catherine. The season, I don't think anything will ever surpass season 1, but this season is really strong.
Yeah.
They're heading for the finish line. It's nose and nose.
I know. I know. You know, it's interesting. As much as musical as I am, I don't notice the music hardly ever. And
That's
I think
because you're
it's
looking at the walls.
I did notice the walls.
Oh, yes.
Their bedroom. I was like, I noticed the walls.
Didn't I tell you? Yes, I know.
Yeah,
they're beautiful.
Though that color, oh my God. And it can tell it's a paint and a glaze. Because when the walls are shiny, you can tell they put a glaze over it.
Yeah.
And when they're matte, they don't. I told you. Now, the thing I did notice, one of the things I do find that the house is a little bit distracting. It reminds me too much of River Run in its paneling and its heaviness. The colors of the walls. There's a lot of colors of blues and, rich woods.
Do you think they have doubling rooms that double, maybe?
I think they've used some of the River Run rooms for
could be.
this. And it shows. Like there was one angle, like when they're pulling him into the bedroom, it looked like them coming into the parlor of River Run where the dining room was across the hall. And that's what it looked like to me. Things that stood out for me was the acting. Claire, Katrina this was her episode. And I've noticed this, it seems like this is what they've done with each episode. It's like they give an episode to someone and they just let them shine. Last it was Roger. Before that it was Jamie, and this one is Claire. It'll be interesting to see what the next episode, because it looks like it might be a Brie episode. So we'll see with I know Bonnet. The other thing I did notice, and this is something I go back a little bit. We keep talking about the comment, like the things that harken back to other episodes or harken back to the story, that things that Jamie has experienced before. Did anyone see the common thread between when Culloden, when he was in the field and he opened his eyes, and then this episode, both of them with Claire as the reason? I thought that was the first thing that popped into my head when he took a breath and opened his eyes. It was, Culloden all over again. I just really, 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 really like Cesar in this episode. he just seems like he's just smooth. That kind of that French, I don't know. I can't think of the word.
Coolness.
Yeah,
There's a French term. Yeah, je ne
that's
sais quoi.
Fergus. That's Fergus.
But it's Fergus. But it seems like but Fergus, I think it's a common thing amongst French men that you often see. So it's in Fergus, but it's also in Cesar because he's actually is French. He's not someone pretending to be French.
No.
He's and very so French. But he's, because in the book he was like considered a dandy. He liked to dress nicely. He was like, he's kind of, he was sort of, what we call a metrosexual today. And I felt like he did exude that in this episode when he was talking to you. He's like, he's just French and, I'm sexy and I know it, kind of that,
That is Cesar.
Look at me and weep.
Look at me and weep. I said that last time, Catherine, right?
That's Jamie in the river.
The gray stuff.
That was a thirst shot. But I mean, he's just sexy as hell, and he knows it, and it comes through when they let him do something.
Yeah,
I hope that this continues because he really is quite good.
I know, and that's the thing is that it's just been such a mystery. And here he is, and it was great, and there's still a mystery. All right, big themes, and then we'll wrap it up. Carmen?
Well, I think the title held the key to the big theme. What's the difference between a monster and a hero? Jamie says it's a thin line, but I think it may be thin, but it's very clear to me. And, I thought that it was clever writing to work Bonnet into this, his name and his threat into this storyline, not only because it sets up for what's coming down the pike, but in addition to that, it coupled him with a snake who, in this instance, I don't think of snakes as monsters. I don't have a thing against snakes, but what it did was monstrous. And then the threat of the bison coming in, to little Jemmy and his useless au pair.
Nanny.
Yeah, his useless nanny.
Oh, God.
Well, she screamed, but a lot of good that did. So I think that there were two animals that could be considered monsters in this. And then there was one human with the specter of Stephen Bonnet throughout the episode, actually. And then the heroes that I saw were everywhere. Honestly, you think about it, they were everywhere. Claire, Jamie, Marcelly, Fergus, Ian, Roger, they all of them did heroic. Bree, they all did heroic things in this episode. I know it wasn't planned, but it just seems so good at this time. A reminder, that anybody can be a hero. You can also be a monster. People get to choose what they, what kind of person that they want to be in life.
My big theme, it has something to do with purpose. That when people know what they're fashioned to do and they're allowed to do that they are heroes. You need love in your life. You need love, you need something to hope for and something to do. And, there's this theme of, what Claire talks to Bree about it. If I lost you or Jamie, I wouldn't be whole, but I would still have my calling, my purpose. And I thought that when Roger prays over Jamie, then when he asks for God's mercy, that I saw the seeds of Roger finding his purpose. Bree's engineering that came to fruition in this episode. Claire's a healer, Jamie's a man and a laird, and he said he made his choice. He come back because he's needed, because he said, there's a war coming. God has made me what I am. He's given me a duty and I must do it no matter the cost. So, the love of Claire brought him back, but also his purpose. Taking care of her and taking care of all those people who depend on him. In the book, I know.
As you need me.
Yeah, he realizes, like, God, Roger can't do what I'm asking him to do. We don't see that in the show because we don't see his mental process, but that was just a big theme for me is people, how important purpose is along with love. Those things make us whole.
I saw my big thing. I thought that the dyeing of the cloth was sort of like you have something, you've transported it to something else because of a process in the middle that solidifies it as, that shows its true color, changes its color. And I thought that that's pretty much what seemed to happen with Roger from beginning to the end, from Claire, even from being, always, Dr. Mother. And then in this case, she was scared. Like she said, only one of us allowed to be scared at any given time. And this time it's me. They never show her being afraid. We saw Bree coming into her own as an engineer and embracing that. We saw Ian being a man. I mean, the Ian we knew before would never have gone off on Jamie like that. Even Fergus, Mr. Philosophical, I'm French, that French shrug. It's like, it just seemed that everyone has, it's now been determined who they are. Their color is cast. And now we'll see how it gets woven together and whatever they're going to end up doing over the next few episodes, hopefully the next few seasons.
Did you see a transformation in Jamie too?
I did see a transformation in his relationship to Roger, in his trust, in that it seemed like he was suddenly sharing his burden, some of his burden. Like he felt like everything was on his shoulders and now he had someone to share it with. In that, if I don't survive, then I want you to do this. And then allowing Roger to help him was, I think, a huge step. So I think in his regard is that he feels he went from being he thought it seemed like the only man on the ridge to suddenly now having a partner.
I thought there was transformation when he decided to let Claire take the limb when the time came.
Yeah, that's true.
And Ian helped him to see that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ian helped him to realize that he wasn't being as courageous as Ian's own father,
Mm-hmm.
and Fergus with the loss of their limbs, but they're still there. And I thought that was a transformation for an awakening or an understanding that that Jamie went through after that. He thought about that.
Mm-hmm. And it was the first time we actually see Fergus and Ian interacting like brothers.
Well, except for the sex back in season 3 when Fergus gives him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was but it was just interesting in that he was just saying, I don't want your feelings to be hurt by seeing your hero talk about how he doesn't want a life that you have.
Yeah.
He doesn't want something to happen to him that you've had happen to you. And I don't know what effect that will have. And I thought that was pretty insightful on Ian's part. And, I thought that, and I think that Fergus's reaction was brilliant.
You know, another theme that I noticed was that this was the first episode where I really saw that Jamie and Claire both allowed other people to comfort them and allowed other people to take the lead. So when they first bring Jamie back and Marcelly and Claire have that little scene, and Marcelly saying, we'll go find the, the maggots and this, she's comforting her. And then when Bree and Claire sit and talk on the stairs and Claire reveals her fears. And I mean, it was like and then Roger obviously was able to help Jamie, and Ian was able to help Jamie. And Fergus was able to help Marcelly and Ian. It was like the chorus came up. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see where it goes. Like I want Jamie and Claire to stay the center. I don't want to go off on tangents about these different people, but it's cool that we have seen the strengths of those characters relative to the main two characters, who are the main two characters in my book.
They are the core of the story.
Yeah.
I sent that out in a tweet the other day, and a young woman, I think she was young, responded to me and she said, they are? I said, are you a book reader?
Was she kidding?
Yeah. No, I don't think she was. I think she wasn't a book reader, and she, she can't tell. Yeah. But I think she probably could tell from this episode.
Well, I think this is exactly what Antoinette has said in the past could make the show a successful adaptation of the books, is really explore these characters and the relationships, but keep Jamie and Claire the center. I really think this episode did a beautiful job of that.
Everyone keeps going on about Claire, Claire, Claire. When I read the books, it was all about Jamie and their relationship to Jamie.
Yes.
And I thought, well, maybe I missed something. But then I saw Diana said the same thing. So I'm like, oh, okay. So I didn't get it wrong.
No, she says it's his story told through the eyes of Claire.
Claire, yeah. It's like every single person's there. It's about their relationship to him. So when they go too far from that, even though I find some of the other, characters interesting, he's still the best actor in the show.
Yeah, so I agree.
So whatever they're going to do, the more they have of him, the better it's going to be.
His range is just blows me out of the water.
I don't understand the lack of recognition, though. I really don't.
I think that's I've heard a lot about the politics and the whole.
Yeah. That's what people say.
Thing. They wait till people are either going to die or, and then you can see it like the year that you're like, oh, well, he's definitely going to get it this time. They're doing some payback from,
they're going back to somebody.
Leonardo DiCaprio. Well, we got to give it to him because he's been nominated 11 times and we've never given it to, so, or else.
Susan Lucci.
Yeah. It's strange. And I think people are not very happy about it, and rightfully so. For this entire century so far, we have been focused on anti-heroes in literature and TV, and Breaking Bad and all of these guys. They're always marginally bad. Jamie is a good guy. I think that there was a time when that was really the thing in Hollywood. It's not so much anymore. It's the anti-hero that gets the attention now.
Or at the moment, it's always it'll probably catch on in the season 9, the last. They'll
go back.
Oh my gosh!
Hey,
this is an amazing hero. Yeah.
I did notice a strange little thing, though, that I think might have been a little slip. Did you hear Roger say when Claire placed the maggots on Jamie's leg. He says, they tickle.
Yeah.
That was not in the show. That was in the books. His foot, when he came back, it was badly infected.
Yeah.
But
Oh.
that
she put
wasn't
maggots
shown
on
in the
him.
show.
Yeah.
Has he had maggots?
No,
She put them on
not
his
in the
foot.
show.
I know, but
book.
I know.
But-
I'm thinking in the
Mhm.
show.
I don't think she did it I can't remember it in the show.
No, she didn't. Because he
Well,
came back on horse. He came to River Run.
maybe
There was
the
no discussion
Indians
about his
put
feet.
maggots on him. I don't know.
Well, you can
In the idiot hut.
think of things, but I thought that was a little bit of a slip,
Mm.
but really the
Mhm.
only one that I.
If Shane is a book reader and she makes book slips, no problem. Yeah.
She can write more as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, she was my favorite from last time. My favorite episode from
Mhm.
last season. So I was hoping she would be back.
Mhm.
Well,
Are we all talked out?
I think
I
we're all
think so.
talked out. And Catherine, it's like really late.
Yeah. What time is it here?
It's almost 11 there.
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
surprised.
Okay.
All right, I'll
Bye,
see you
guys.
guys Tuesday.
Love you.
Okay,
Bye.
love you.
Love you too.
Okay.
Bye.